Sister Mary, wheeling the bassinet, entered the delivery room. Mrs. Young was more than woozy. She was fast asleep, with a look of determined self-satisfaction of someone who knows that other people are going to have to do the running around for once. Baby A was asleep beside her, weighed in name tag. Sister Mary, who had been brought up to be helpful, removed the name tag, copied it out, and attached the duplicate to the baby in her care. The babies looked similar, both being small, blotchy, and looking sort of, though not really, like Winston Churchill. Now, thought Sister Mary, I could do with a nice cup of tea. Most of the members of the convent were old-fashioned Satanists, like their parents and grandparents before them. They'd been brought up to it, and weren't, when you got right down to it, particularly evil. Human beings, mostly, aren't. They just get carried away by new ideas, like dressing up in jackboots and shooting people, or dressing up in white sheets and lynching people, or dressing up in tie-dye jeans and playing guitars at people. Offer people a new creed with a costume, and their hearts and minds will follow. Anyway, being brought up as a Satanist tended to take the edge off of it. It was something that you did on Saturday nights. The rest of the time, you simply got on with your life as best as you could, just like everyone else. Besides, Sister Mary was a nurse, and nurses, whatever their creed, are primarily nurses, which had a lot to do with wearing your watch upside down, keeping calm in emergencies, and dying for a cup of tea. She hoped someone would come soon. She had done the important bit. Now she wanted her tea. It may help to understand human affairs to be clear that most of the great triumphs and tragedies of history were caused not by people being fundamentally good or fundamentally bad, but by people being fundamentally people. There was a knock at the door. She opened it. "Has it happened yet?" said Mr. Young. "I'm the father, the husband, whatever. Both." Sister Mary had expected the American cultural attached to look like Blake Carrington or J.R. Ewing. Mr. Young didn't look like any American she'd ever seen on television, except possibly for the avuncular sheriff on the better class of murder mystery, with the little old lady as the sleuth, and no car chases unless they're done very slowly. He was something of a disappointment. She didn't think much of his cardigan either. She swallowed her disappointment. "Oh, yes," she said. "Congratulations. Your lady wife's asleep, poor pet." Mr. Young looked over her shoulder. "Twins," he said. He reached for his pipe. He stopped reaching for his pipe. He reached for it again. "Twins? No one said anything about twins." "Oh, no," said Sister Mary hurriedly. "This one's yours. The other ones are someone else's. Just looking after him until Sister Grace gets back." "No," she reiterated, pointing out the adversary, destroyer of kings, angel of the bottomless pit, great beast that is called dragon, prince of this world, father of lies, spawn of Satan, and lord of darkness. "This one's definitely yours. From the top of his head to the tips of his hoofy woofsies. Which he hasn't got," she added hastily. Mr. Young peered down. Yes," he said doubtfully. "He looks like my side of the family. All, present and correct, is he?" "Oh, yes," said Sister Mary. "He's a very normal child," she added. "Very, very normal." There was a pause. They stared at the sleeping baby. "You haven't got much of an accent," said Sister Mary. "Have you been over here long?" "About 10 years," said Mr. Young, mildly puzzled. "The job moved, see, and I had to move with it." "It must be a very exciting job, I've always thought," said Sister Mary. Mr. Young looked gratified. Not everyone, appreciated the stimulating aspects of cost accountancy. As a personal note, I would agree, because that's what I'm studying. "I expect it was very different where you were before," Sister Mary went on. "I suppose so," said Mr. Young, who never really thought much about it. Luton, as far as he could remember, was very much like Tadfield. The same sort of hedges between your house and the railway station. The same sort of people. "Taller buildings, for one thing," said Sister Mary desperately. Mr. Young stared at her. The only one he could think of was the Alliance and the Leicester offices. "And I expect you go to a lot of garden parties," said the nun. He was on firmer ground here. Deirdre was very keen on that sort of thing. "Lots," he said with feeling. "Deirdre makes jam for them, you know, and I normally have to help with the white elephant." This was an aspect of Buckingham Palace society that had never occurred to Sister Mary, although the pachyderm fitted right in. "I expect they're the tribute," she said. "I read where those sort of foreign paunchets get all sorts of things." "I'm sorry?" "I'm a big fan of the royal family, you know." "Oh, so am I," said Mr. Young, leaping gratefully onto this new ice floe and this bewildering stream of consciousness. Yes, you knew where you were with the royals, the proper ones, of course, who pulled their weight in the hand-waving and bridge-opening department, not the ones who went to discos all night long and were sick all over the paparazzi. It is probably worth mentioning at this point that Mr. Young thought that the paparazzi was a kind of Italian linoleum. "That's nice," said Sister Mary. "I thought you people weren't too keen on them, with all the revolutioning and throwing all those tea sets into the river." She chattered on, encouraged by the order's instructions that the members should always say what is on their minds. Mr. Young was out of his depth, and too tired now to worry about it very much. The religious life probably made people a little odd. He wished Mrs. Young would wake up. Then one of the words in Sister Mary's wittering struck a hopeful chord in his mind. "Would there be any possibility of me possibly being able to have a cup of tea, perhaps?" he ventured. "Oh my," said Sister Mary, her hand flying to her mouth. What am I thinking of?" Mr. Young made no comment. "I'll see to it right away." "No, I'll see to it right away," she said. "Are you sure that you don't want coffee, though? There's one of those vendable machines on the next floor." "Tea, please," said Mr. Young. "My word, you really have gone native, haven't you?" said Sister Mary gaily as she bustled out. Mr. Young, left alone with one sleeping wife and 2 sleeping babies, sagged onto a chair. Yes, it must be all that getting up early and doing and going on. Good people, of course, but not entirely composed mentis. He had seen a Ken Russell film once. There had been nuns in it. There didn't seem to be that sort of thing going on, but no smoke without fire, and so on. He sighed. It was then when baby A awoke, and settled down to a really good wail. Mr. Young hadn't had to quiet a screaming baby for years. He'd never been much good at it to start with. He always respected Sir Winston Churchill, and patting small versions of him on the bottom had always seemed ungracious. "Welcome to our world," he said wearily. "You get used to it after a while." The baby shut its mouth and glared at him as if he was a concurrent general. Sister Mary chose that moment to come in with the tea. Satanist or not, she also found a plate and arranged some iced biscuits on it. They were the sort you ever got at the bottom of a certain tea-time assortments. Mr. Young's was the same pink as a surgical appliance, had a snowman picked out on it in white icing. I don't expect you normally have these," she said. "They're what you call cookies. We call them biscuits." Mr. Young just opened his mouth to explain that, yes, so did he, and so did all the people even in Luton, when another nun rushed in breathless. She looked at Sister Mary, and realized that Mr. Young had never seen the inside of a pentagram, and confined herself to pointing at baby A and winking. Sister Mary nodded and winked back. The nun wheeled the baby out. As methods of human communication go, a wink is quite versatile. You can say a lot with a wink. For example, the new nun's wink said, "Where the hell have you been? Baby B has been born. We're ready to make the switch. And here's you in the wrong room with the adversary, destroyer of kings, angel of the bottomless pit, great beast which is called dragon, prince of this world, father of lies, spawn of Satan, and lord of darkness, drinking tea. Do you realize I've nearly been shot?" As far as she was concerned, Sister Mary's answering wink meant, "Here's the adversary, destroyer of kings, angel of the bottomless pit, great beast that is called dragon, prince of this world, father of lies, spawn of Satan, and lord of darkness." I can't talk now because of this outsider here. Whereas Sister Mary, on the other hand, had thought that the orderly's wink was more along the lines of, "Well done, Sister Mary. Switched over the babies all by herself. Now indicate me the superfluous child, and I shall remove it and let you get on with your tea with His Royal Excellency of American culture." Therefore her own wink had been, "There you go, dearie. That's baby B. Now take him away and leave me to chat with His Excellency. I've always wanted to ask him why they have those tall buildings with all the mirrors on them." The subtleties of all this were lost on Mr. Young, who was extremely embarrassed by all this clandestine affection, and was thinking, "That Mr. Russell, he knew what he was talking about, and no mistake." Sister Mary's air might not have been noticed by the other nun, had not she herself been severely rattled by the Secret Service men in Mrs. Dowling's room, who kept looking at her with growing unease. This is because they had been trained to act a certain way to people in long flowing robes and long flowing headdresses, and were currently suffering from a conflict of signals. Even suffering from a conflict of signals aren't the best people to be holding guns, especially when they've just witnessed a natural childbirth, which definitely looked like an un-American way of bringing new citizens into the world. And also, they'd heard that there were missiles in the building. Mrs. Young stirred. "Have you picked a name for him yet?" said Sister Mary archly. Said Mr. Young. "Oh, not really. If he was a girl, it would have been Lucinda, after my mother, or Germaine. That was Deirdre's choice." "Wormwood's a nice name," said the nun, remembering her classics. "Or Damien. Damien's very popular."